Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Tent of Abraham. I'm Tamir Kreisman from Jerusalem, Israel, and we continue with Pirkei Rabbi Eliezer. We are currently in the White House, chapter 36b, and this is called Family Ties. Hallelujah Adonai kol goyim shebechu kol ha'umim ki gavar aleinu chasdo ve'emet Adonai le'olam. Hallelujah. When Lavan heard of Jacob, his sister's son, and his might and strength by the wall, he ran towards him to kiss and hug him, as said in Genesis 29:13. Now it came to pass, when Lavan heard the report of Jacob, his sister's son, that he ran towards him. He embraced him, and he kissed him, and he brought him into his house. He told Lavan all these happenings. You do understand this is a continuation from last week, yes? Okay. What came to pass? How did he hear? The moment this stranger came to the borders of their city and removed a several-ton stone that took all the shepherds to remove, doing it by himself, popping it like a cork, word kind of got out. And word traveled fast because Superman just came to town. After which Rachel then ran to tell him as well. Now, why did Lavan run to Jacob? Could Rachel have just brought him to her house? Maybe could have done that. She could have done that, right? They were family after all, and this wasn't anything weird or inappropriate. See, the thing is, Lavan had heard of Jacob way before he popped the rock, if you will. Look at what Targum Yonatan says, and you will understand. First, we get the warning by Rachel to Jacob that reads, "And Jacob told unto Rachel that he has come to be with her father to take one of his daughters. And Rachel answered him, and you said, you can't dwell with him, for he is a man of cunning. And Jacob said to her, I am more cunning and wiser than he, nor can he do me evil, because the word of the Lord is my helper. And when she knew that he was the son of Rivkah, she ran and made it known to her father." Now, remember this warning and remember this conversation, what Jacob is telling Rachel right now, because in the next teaching, we're going to jump, we're going to conclude these 21 years. We're going to move ahead in time 21 years, and then she's going to forget this conversation, and it is going to be, how shall we say, the story, detrimental to her health, okay? So, then we get Lavan. And it was when Lavan heard the account of the strength and piety of Jacob, the son of his sister, how he had taken the birthright, meaning from Esau. So he already knew this, right? He took the birthright from Esau 14 years before this encounter. And the order of blessing from the hand of his brother, and how the Lord had revealed himself to him in Bethel. How could he know that? How could Lavan possibly know that Jacob had this dream in Bethel? Okay. How the stone had been removed and how the well had overflown and risen to the brink. After all this, then he ran to meet him and embrace him and kissed him and led him to his house, and he related to Lavan all these things. It's like, what happened? Oh, really? I did not know that, Jacob. Tell me more. Of course he knew. Where did Lavan hear all these things, which no one else could have known? We have learned of Lavan before, have we not? The most powerful sorcerer in the ancient world. What made him so powerful? His idols, his teraphim, again, we will discuss this in the next class, told him everything that was happening in the world, which is why Rachel would later steal them from her father, that she should not know that they fled from where they were. Okay, again, that we're discussing next class. Genesis 29, verse 15 says, "And Lavan said to Jacob, because you are my brother, should you work for me for nothing? Tell me your wages, and they will be." Right? Tell me what your wages will be. Was Jacob Lavan's brother? He was the son of his sister, says our text. That's what it says. You are your brother. Vayomer Lavan leYaakov, Hachi ata. For you are my brother. He's not his brother, he's his nephew, right? This comes to teach us that the son of a man's sister is called his son, and the son of a man's brother is called his brother. This is a misprint, though, okay? Since it's not exclusive to the aunt or the uncle. Where do we learn this from? Asks Pirkei Rabbi Eliezer. From Abraham, our father, who told Lot in Genesis 13:8, ויאמר אברהם אל לוט, אל נא תהיה מריבה ביני וביניך ובין רועי ובין רועיך, כי אנשים אחים אנחנו, ach, as a brother. Please, let there be no quarrel between me and between you, and between my herdsmen and between your herdsmen, for we are brothers. But again, Lot, who was Lot? Lot was Abraham's nephew. Sarah was Lot's sister, okay? Our commentators are having a difficult time with the statement over here, as the point they are trying to make is as follows. In most cases, the son of the sister looks like the mother's brother. The son of the sister looks like the mother's brother, which is why they are called brothers, while the sons of the brother does not. Now remember, did I write it here? Oh yes, I did. I wrote it here. Okay. Although we know that Lot, who was the son of Abraham's deceased brother, Haran, the one who burned in the fire, looked exactly or almost exactly like Abraham, which is why it was initially confusing to the four kings, since they came to Sodom to find Abraham, but settled for Lot, right? They heard that Abraham is in Sodom and Gomorrah, right? But then they came and they felt like, okay, you look like Abraham, but it's not Abraham. We're taking him anyway to try and get Abraham to come after him. We discussed this in long time ago. In another place in the Torah, in Genesis 14:14, it says, but we're going to read also 2 verses before for context, of course. So Genesis 14:12, and they took Lot and his possessions, the son of Abraham's brother, or Abram's brother, and they departed, and he was living in Sodom. And the fugitive came. Who's a fugitive? This would be Eliezer, right? Came and told Abram, the Hebrew, and he was living in the plain of Mamre, the Amorite, the brother of Eshcol, and the brother of Aner, who were Abram's confederates. Ba'alei Brit, as in they had a covenant with Abram. And Abram heard that his brother had been taken captive, not his nephew, not the son of his brother, but rather his brother has been taken captive. And he armed his men, and so on and so forth, and they pursued them until Dan. Okay. This is to teach us that a man's nephew is called his brother, and a man's son's son, meaning his grandsons, are called his sons. And where do we learn this from? Think. Jacob, right? As said in Genesis 48:5. And now, as for your 2 sons, Jacob is speaking to Joseph regarding who? Ephraim and Manasseh, who were born to you in the land of Egypt. Until I came to you to the land of Egypt, they are mine. Ephraim and Manasseh shall be mine like Reuven and Shimon. My grandsons, your sons, are mine now, just like my own 2 sons. Okay? Very clear. Were there Jacob's sons? No, they were Joseph's sons. This is to teach us that a man's grandsons are called his sons, and his granddaughters are called his daughters. And from where do we get this? From Lavan. This is beautiful because it just shows you how to read the simple text. In other words, understand what it is that you're reading. So we learn this from Lavan, who said to Jacob in Genesis 31:43, and Lavan answered and said to Jacob, the daughters are my daughters, and the sons are my sons. In other words, the daughters that you have, they're my daughters. The sons that you have, they're my sons. And the animals are my animals. We'll already get to that next week. The animals are my animals. And all that you see is mine. Now they do these daughters of mine today, or to the children whom we have born. Okay, so in other words, they're all mine. They're my sons and they're my daughters. Were the sons his sons? No. And so this comes to teach us. Now, I understand that this part is somewhat repetitive, but I still have to go through it. Jacob began to work for a wife or a woman for 7 years. In other words, we understand this. It gives us example after example. A man's grandchildren are called his own children. The Hebrew says as follows, Hetchil Yaakov la'avod be'isha shiv'a shanim. So Jacob started working for a wife or a woman, be'isha, sheva shanim, 7 years. Now we can read this exact language in Hosea 14:13. And Jacob fled to the field of Aram, and Israel worked for a wife, and for a wife he guarded. Now it's very interesting that it says that it starts off with Jacob, but then Israel, because he wasn't called Israel until after they left, right? But still, just think about that, but that's not the point right now. We see that there are 2 wives in this verse. That's what I want to focus on, right? Be'isha, vayavod Israel be'isha, uve'isha shamar. So, the first one being Leah, the second one being Rachel, 2 wives. So Jacob worked for his wife for 7 years, only he thought that he was getting Rachel. After 7 years, he had festivities for 7 days when he took Leah, as said in Genesis 29:27. Complete the wedding week of this one, right? In other words, complete the week that you married Leah, and then you're going to get Rachel. And we will give you this one, Rachel, too, for the work you will render me for another 7 years. In other words, you just signed on that right now for 14 years. What's the wedding week? This is the Sheva Brachot. This tradition had not ceased from Israel till this very day, and it still continues, of course. The first day is a wedding, and for another 6 days after that, each day has its own blessing, each day has its own party. Usually the great part about the Sheva Brachot is if not everybody can make it to the wedding, then the Sheva Brachot happens in people's homes all around the country or all around the area. So more friends and family, people who could not make those festivities, come and hang out with the bride and groom. It's a great opportunity for everybody to participate. Okay, so, and Jacob did so, and he completed the week of this one. This is in verse 28. And he gave his daughter Rachel to him as a wife. In other words, the week for Leah was complete, and now he married Rachel. So he got married to them a week apart. So you see, Jacob married Leah and then Rachel 1 week apart as he committed to work 7 more years for her, 7 additional years. And all the men of the place gathered to do chesed, kindness, to Jacob, as said in Genesis 29:22. So Lavan gathered all the people of the place, and he made a feast. Everybody, right? Now it is important to note, the reason Lavan gathered everyone initially is because they were all in on the con. They knew exactly what he was going to do. He discussed it with them, and they all kept that secret. Every last one of them knew that he was going to switch his daughters and swindle Jacob, and not one of them spoke up. Nevertheless, because they did gather afterwards to celebrate the union, though it wasn't even the original agreed upon union, it counted for something. It's also very important to note. The Holy One, blessed be he, said, "You have shown chesed to my servant Jacob, so I will pay you your dues in this world." Look at the righteousness of God, okay? They all tried to play Jacob. Their intent was off to begin with, and yet still because they showed up for the bride and groom. Sometimes all you need to do is to show up. Because they showed up with whatever preconceived notions they had, whatever plans in their head they had, because they showed up, God would grant them great wealth and success. But only in this world. We have seen something very similar to this, and specifically when it comes to our father Jacob, from the book of Jasher. And Pharaoh sent Joseph, saying, "Go up and bury thy father as he said, and as he made you swear." And Joseph rose up with all his brethren to go to the land of Canaan, to bury their father Jacob as he had commanded them. And Pharaoh commanded it should be proclaimed throughout Egypt, saying, listen now, "Whoever does not go up with Joseph and his brethren to the land of Canaan to bury Jacob shall die." And all Egypt heard of Pharaoh's proclamation, and they all rose up together, and all the servants and Pharaoh and the elders of his house and all the elders of the land of Egypt went up with Joseph, and all the officers and nobles of Pharaoh went up as the servants of Joseph. And they went to bury Jacob in the land of Canaan. They were all under duress, under the penalty of death. Should something be counted or considered positive for them? They didn't do this on their own. They would not have done this on their own. Honestly, they really couldn't care less. They were not fond of shepherds. To them it was disgusting because they worshiped the lamb anyway. Let alone those disgusting, Hebrews. In the court of law, this would not hold up, right? It's like signing a contract with a gun to your head. It will not hold up in a court of law. If I wasn't going to sign all my wealth away, he would kill me. Obviously, the contract doesn't hold, right? And yet with God, it does. Why? First of all, God is the one that made this arrangement. He made these things happen. But look how much our Heavenly Father loves all of his creation and nitpick in the positive sense to find anything he can to reward his kids. What happened as a result of all of Egypt showing kindness to Jacob, we've learned this before, they all buried Jacob, and as a result, not a single one of the Egyptians remained in the water after the splitting of the sea. They were all thrown out, right? They were flung unto shore, every last one of them. You buried my servant, and so too you shall receive burial, and by God himself no less. And all this despite what Egypt did to Israel. Do you understand? So, next time, and this goes both ways, if you are thinking of doing a mitzvah, we know that you get rewarded with that mitzvah, not just thinking, oh wow, that'd be great if I did that. Like we said, let's say you see someone needing help in the street, you start running to them, but another person was right there and they helped that person, it counts as if you did that mitzvah. Let's say you didn't even move your body yet, but you saw someone in distress and you were about to go and someone is already helping them out. You still get that mitzvah. But it also works on the negative sense. You saw something, you looked at something inappropriate, you were about to go do something, even if you stopped, even if that opportunity was removed from you, it still counts as a sin, right? So again, it works in the positive and negative exactly in the same sense. But look how God repays chesed and kindness to everyone for everything that they do. Now let's get back. The Holy and Blessed be He said, you have shown chesed to my servant Jacob, so I will pay you your dues in this world. In other words, you showed up for his wedding and you partied with him. L'sameach chatan v'kala, to make happy the bride and bridegroom. However, the emphasis here is on this world and not in the world to come. God is perfectly just, make no mistake. The people of Lavan were wicked just like him, as were the Egyptians later on, we see. This is all taken into account. And why? Because God does not want to reward the wicked in the world to come. And this is from Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer, as said in 2 Kings 5:1. Now Naaman, the general of the king of Aram, was a prominent man before his master and respected, for through him had the Lord given victory to Aram. Because of this guy, who was not a good guy, but because of him, God gave them victory over to Aram. And the man was a great warrior, and he was a leper. God pays the wicked in this world, and the righteous in the world to come. Case in point, Naaman innocently and randomly fired his bow. This is what happened. He fired his bow and he killed King Ahab, the most wicked king of all of Israel. God set him up because Ahab needed to fall, and he needed to get cured of his leprosy, which he does at the end of the chapter. Only God can do this. And this way, in the end of days, no nation or man can ever come before God and complain that he is not just. But I did this, I did that. And look at your life. You lived a very cushy, very comfortable life. But the world to come, you got none of it. And this is especially, that's why we say, tzaddik v'ra lo, rasha v'tov lo, how come the wicked are prospering in this world? Because this is all they have. Do not envy them at all. When they die, it's all over for them. And Lavan took 2 of his maidservants and gave them to his daughters. The text says he gave them to Jacob, but he gave them to his daughters. Were they his maidservants? PDE asks. Who are we talking about here? We're talking about Bilhah and Zilpah, 2 out of the 4 mothers of the 12 tribes. What does Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer say? They were his daughters. What? Now, we didn't know this, but now we do, myself included. So what exactly was their relation? This comes to show us that a man's children from his concubines are called his servants, Children from concubines are called servants, manservants or maidservants, as said in Genesis 29:29, and Lavan gave his daughter Rachel his maidservant Bilhah for a maidservant. Bilhah was Rachel's half-sister. So was Zilpah. You understand? They all had the same father, and yet because concubine, there you go. Same thing. Hagar, right? Says, yes, she was actually an Egyptian princess. Why was she an Egyptian princess? Only because her father was Pharaoh. But she was not the daughter to the queen, rather the daughter of one of Pharaoh's concubines. That's why she was only called a maidservant. You see? So we see this. I don't know if they give that. They don't give the example here, but, all right. Meaning they don't have the same status as his own children from his wife. Okay, we get that now. And this can even better explain why Lavan came to Jacob later and said, "They are my daughters." He was in fact referring to all 4 of Jacob's wives, who apparently were all sisters themselves. Should have called this teaching sister wives, huh? Rabbi Levi said, "The Holy One, blessed be he, saw Leah's troubles, grievances, sorrows, and he gave her a pregnancy, a comfort for her nephesh." We read in Genesis 29:30-31, "And he came also to Rachel, and he also loved Rachel more than Leah, and he worked with him yet another 7 years. And the Lord saw that Leah was hated, so he opened her womb, but Rachel was barren." It's important to note, we've learned about this one before, it's very important to note that Leah was not at all hated. Jacob, he's going to hate he saw exactly who she was, who her neshama was. But we must understand what's going on here. Rachel and Leah, like Jacob and Esav, were twins. Both of them were twinsies, right? As a result, all parties knew that the elder is destined for the elder and the younger is destined for the younger. So did Lavan, by the way, which is why he switched them. So, who saw that Rachel, Lavan also saw that Rachel was supposed to be the exclusive mother of the 12 tribes. You understand? Okay, so that's why he switched them. So you see, Esav might be a wolf, but Lavan, he's a snake. Esav will come directly at you, while Lavan will speak kindly to you, put his hand over your shoulder and choke you out and devour you whole. Why did Lavan wish to thwart God's plan? There always needs to be some sort of balance in the world, good versus evil. And Lavan was literally the father of evil, as his grandson, who is Lavan's son, his son after Jacob arrived, because he had no sons until Jacob arrived. His wife gave birth to Beor. Who's Beor the father of? Bilam ben Beor, right? So Bilam was Lavan's grandson. Bilam the sorcerer, who had it in for Israel and the children of Israel throughout his entire existence. Evil knows it cannot win. It knows it cannot win, but that is why it's evil. When you know resistance is futile, and yet still, we're not talking about good standing up versus evil. We're talking about the other way around. You're not winning here. But this is the function. It is a specific function that God placed into the world. Because if they give up, then we got no more resistance. Both sides have to be equal all the time. And therefore, evil is very necessary in order to line it up opposite to good. In order for the children of Israel to be able to survive their inevitable descent to Egypt, Jacob had to survive Lavan in a house of idolatry before he went into the realm of idolatry. And not only did Jacob survive Lavan, but no matter what Lavan threw at him, no matter how many times he tried to swindle him, cheat him, and even to kill him, it didn't work. Rachel and Leah saw this also. Keep that in mind. Now, Lavan's reputation preceded him, and he was known throughout the ancient world as the crime lord, if you will. He was absolutely the worst. As Jacob left his father-in-law's house, with wealth that was unmatched in the world at that time, with 11 out of the 12 tribes, and while keeping all the commandments of the Torah, except, as we know, he married sisters. Well, he married sisters, but specifically same father and mother, he married sisters. Although this prohibition, like the rest of the commands in the Torah, had not yet been given, Jacob had to do it for the sake of Shamayim. That's why when he wrestled with the angel of Esav, the Satan, if you will, Satan couldn't find any blemish in him, but he saw, okay, you marry two sisters, you're not allowed to do that in the Torah, but yet the Torah wasn't officially given, yet you still kept the whole Torah. I don't know what to do right now. So that's why he hit him on this side, on his hip, which is close to the brit. He's not going to hit him in the brit, right? Okay, so you understand the point. That was it. That was his only weak spot, and he did that for the sake of heaven, which is why he walked it off. He limped a little bit, and then he was fine afterwards. Okay, but still, we don't eat that specific part of the animal to commemorate this. Okay. So, what are we talking about here? Right, okay. So, all this is hinted at when Esav later comes to him with a show of force of 400 warriors strong. In Genesis 32, 4 and 5, Jacob sent angels ahead of him. These two angels were who? Michael and Gabriel, who have been watching him for a very long time. To the land of Seir, to the field of Edom. And he commended them, saying, so shall you say to my master Esav, let Esav know. Thus said your servant Jacob, I have sojourned with Lavan, and I have tarried until now. Ooh. What is he saying? Let us read the Hebrew. ויצב אותם לאמור, כה תאמרום לאדוני לעשו, כה אמר עבדך יעקב, אם לבן גרתי ואיחר עד עתה. Im Lavan Galti. With Lavan I sojourned or lived, right? Galti is an anagram of Talyag, 613. This is the Gematria, 613, meaning I lived with Lavan. We all know who Lavan is, and yet I kept the 613. In other words, the Torah did not leave me, and I did not leave the Torah, despite being there. Now you can be afraid. See what I'm saying? Jacob just told Lavan via the angels that he kept the 613 commands despite being at this maniac's house for 21 years. So mess with me at your own risk. You might be stronger, but he is way more cunning than you can ever be. And there was no weakness found in me. You see, no matter what we do, we cannot thwart God's plans. Even if we think that, oh, well, this could have been, this should have been, it's already written, right? Proverbs 19:21, there are many thoughts in a man's heart, but God's plan, that shall stand. Rabot machshavot belev ish. It says, many thoughts in the heart of man. The mind and the heart are connected. Va'atzat Adonai hitakum. You can sin, you can do good, and it will always be the outcome that God had desired. It is inevitable. We see through sin after sin after sin throughout the generations in the Torah that it all led to something good down the line. In other words, it had to happen. Just like every correction always comes from a certain amount of impurity. Anyway, now that we understand this, and it will always be the outcome that God desires. Okay, it's inevitable. So we can understand that this little switcheroo was also from God, obviously. So since Jacob's soul and Rachel's soul were connected, his love for her made his love for Leah almost invisible. Jacob did love Leah. She was a great tzadikah, okay? From her comes the line of David. We understand this. Nevertheless, the height and depth of his ability to love her did not depend on his actions down here, as we are speaking of soul ties. This is why it says, and he loved Rachel, but God saw that Leah was hated. It doesn't say that Jacob hated Leah, chas v'shalom, but God saw, okay, we got soulmates over here. How does this come into the mix right now? Okay, so everything was taken into account. Everything was taken into consideration, even the order in which the tribes were born. However, if we think about it, Lavan really had no choice but to do what is in his nature to do, and that is to swindle. He was absolutely right by giving Leah to the elder daughter to Jacob, as Jacob did indeed receive the blessing and promises from the firstborn. You get it? Do you understand now? Jacob needed to receive all the promises from the firstborn, so he could say, hey, you took the thing from your brother, so here you go. Here's my firstborn daughter. Did Esav not sell it to him with a contract? Yes, he did. Meaning everything that is rightfully mine, soulmates included, is now yours. So you see how that worked out, right? As a result, Leah conceived and she bore a son. As our text calls him, Ish Tov Toar Vechacham, a good man, a good-looking man, a wise man. This is Reuben, right? No matter what Jacob did, he could not look at Leah as he looked at Rachel. It's not the same thing. And God saw that need must be filled. He had mercy on Leah. And so, who else can look at a woman with such adoration, with such desire and such want? Her child, her son. And so, Re'u ben, behold, a son. Vatahar Leah vateled ben vatikere shmo Reuven, ki amra ki ra'a Adonai be'anihi, ki ata yoaveni ishi. And Leah conceived and bore a son, and she named him Reuben, behold a son. For she said, because the Lord has seen my affliction, for now my husband will love me. We're going to stop here for today. Okay, we're going to continue next week. These 3 teachings, last week's, this one, and the next one, they're all pretty much connected. So as always, thank you so much for joining me. Have a wonderful rest of the week. Have a Shabbat Shalom. And if you are fasting on the 17th of Tammuz, you know what happened this Thursday? That is when Moses brought the tablets down for the first time. And we all know what happened over there, right? So may God turn our fast days into feast days swiftly and in our time. Be good, everyone. Take care. Bye-bye.